The economy is said to be recovering from the shocks of COVID-19. But this time, how is that impacting on industries and manufacturing firms in the country? There's talk about pickup in economic activities, but how is that also affecting demand or things that these firms are producing in Ghana? What about the reopening of the country's borders and how that would also affect the fortunes of manufacturing firms going forward? Should we forget about the recent depreciation of the Ghana cedi and even the policy rate hike by the Bank of Ghana? We'll be getting some more understanding of these issues and analysis with the Chief Executive Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Dake, as we look at the state of industries and Ghana's economic recovery. All these issues wrapped up on PM Express Business Edition. Be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition, and today we're talking about the state of the Ghanaian industry and the economic recovery. There's talk about the economy recovering, but how is that impacting on industries in the country? And there is no best person to engage than the president of the Ghana Association of Industries, Mr. Dr. Humphrey Dake. And Doc, thank you so much for having time with us. I know it's been very rough and tough for you, but you still made time to be with us as we talk about a lot of things in the industry. And I know very recently you were inducted as the president of the Association of Ghana Industries. How has it been like? I mean, interesting, challenging, or you're still yet to fully take off because there are a lot of turbulence in the skies?
Thank you, George. It's been challenging. The first quarter, we were inaugurated sometime early part of the year, and then we had to shape ourselves into the position and get the system running. Just about then, we all know the COVID transition has been an issue, and one of the key activities or policy concerns that embraced my or baptized me to the seat was the benchmark value.
We're getting more details on that one.
Yeah, so we engaged policymakers, running between the ministries and decision makers, making a strong case why we believe our position is right. Looking into the future, today we see a number of activities falling in place. Granted that government listened to a few of our opinion on the benchmark related issues, we presume some interventions would have been helpful in this current era regarding the issues on the food basket. And we know how it is driving inflation, and the concerns are out there. And considering the events playing in the world and the pronounced position of inflation worldwide, driving cost of every activity to extend your policy rate, are being affected. So when you sit in the position as the president of AGI, a lot of complaints come to your decks, concerns, whilst you need to make time to engage stakeholders, strategic institutions, and then the ministers and decision makers of the economy, so that we could shape ourselves and take up appropriately. So we are on course.
You came in at a time when, and I know that previous presidents have had challenging times, but COVID threw a lot of economies out of gear. And some people have even said that nobody was ever better prepared for COVID. You are taking on at a time when, it's still kind of stabilized a little bit, but a lot of industries have been through a lot of heat.
That's correct.
And some might say a lot might be on your plate to see how these industries recover from the shocks of COVID.
Very correct. I mean, day in, day out, we meet colleagues in industry, strategizing and discussing how we can assist them restructure their operations, ring fence debts where they are, and reposition their business to take advantage of the future and the number of government interventions that are in. So within this period, I have engaged with an institution like the Ghana Stock Exchange, considering options in their investment portfolio, how we can intervene and increase the number of Ghanaian industries on the stock exchange, what modalities and how can we shape them to be ready for such interventions. We've been engaging with the Development Bank of Ghana. That's a very strategic one that has come up, and we have made a series of presentations to them, and we're still engaging, all with the mindset of repositioning industry to take advantage of the era we find ourselves. Yes, COVID had its toll on industries very significantly, and then as we in the transition to recovery, then comes in this recent inflationary hikes coming as a result of the Ukraine and the Russian war. So then that brings a different picture. And then in the course of COVID, one big cost element that most industry faced was the freight charges to our various imports. That escalated that much that our product pricing were affected. However, as you seek to increase your product pricing, you are fairly aware that the consuming or the purchasing power of the average Ghanaian on the street is still challenged. So you need to figure out how to cut your cost and still have your market share so you don't lose it and still get yourself ready for the future.
I'll be coming back to you on how are you managing with this whole inflationary issues and pricing, because you're not for the Christmas and you need to find a way to maybe break even.
That's correct.
On some production issues and manufacturing as well. But also want to get back to you and find out from you, as we speak right now, I mean, what is the state of industries in Ghana today? And we've seen a lot of them who have turned into just packaging, importing, and then just packaging and all the rest.
That's correct.
Coming from COVID, all the associated challenges as well. I mean, be real with us. What is the state of industries in Ghana here today?
Well, it's a mixed basket. It's a mixed basket because some over the years have managed to develop a niche market for themselves, given that they have developed the backward integration and they are therefore protected to some extent in their raw material bit. Granted that you're into the agri-value chain production, and then you've developed a backward integration like you're into the palm oil industry that gives you your feed in. Then to some extent, as long as you keep your backward activities well, you to some extent be stabilized. Nonetheless, there will be challenges when you are not fully integrated and you need to import a portion of your raw materials. And most of us fall into that category of value addition, import substitution, and therefore you are forced to import a bit of your raw materials and add value to it. So in the COVID era, we know the supply chain was disrupted and the cost of transporting raw materials was expensive. The freight charges, like I mentioned, to some extent there were shortages of products because some countries then decided to stock more product for themselves and then protect their market. So it's been a mixed basket, and therefore industry at large had a section of the difficulties with COVID. And then therefore moving beyond now, then there comes this issue of fuel increase in pricing, driving inflation. So as you strive to stabilize and try to get out of the difficulties, then comes a new era. And therefore it calls for skill, it calls for astute business owners who have over the period probably done some good savings and strategic investments.
Even if before we come to the supply challenges and how that is also impacting on inflation and production as all, let's still backtrack a little bit then. Even during the COVID era, we are not out of COVID, we are still in the transition, even though we can still manage the numbers better now. There were a lot of promises in terms of stimulus package and all the rest and all those things. And if those stimulus package came indeed, I should expect to see very strong industries out there. Did industries get access to those stimulus package that was promised by government?
Well, that is a big concern of some industrialists. Yes, a number of stimulus activities were promised in one form of shape. 1D, 1F had its own package through the tax exemptions and GIPC interventions here and there. Some factories did not get access to this stimulus package. Some did, because how it was structured. Previously, the understanding was either you get a direct injection of funds, or you might get some form of indirect support.
Yeah.
However, it was structured where the banks had to intervene and then get a head cut on your interest charges, and then therefore the banks had to do their own risk analysis on you. So it took a different form of shape, and the number of industries that really assessed and benefited from this stimulus package might not be that significant.
Do you think that it has to do with the structure? If it was well structured, industries might be in a better position now to manage the shocks that is facing all firms across the country and even outside the country as well?
Yeah, I believe it was a structure and the form and shape in which it took. You will appreciate that by the said time, government also had its own difficulties with revenue and shortfalls coming in beyond 2018, 2019. And therefore, the structure of the stimulus package and the timely release of such packages, to some extent, by the time you get this intervention, some companies had folded, others were still struggling to come up. But there were a few strategic ones that were targeted that had direct support from Exim Bank and a few other institutions with a head cut in their interest rate spread out over a period. But as to how many companies really benefited, it became an issue of you look at the structure, and if it fits your portfolio, some did pick it up, but majority, I believe, opted to do their own thing and the way they've been surviving over the period.
You talked about the competitive advantage and how a lot of your members had to strategize to stay in business. Now, whilst we are trying to manage the situation with respect to COVID, now the supply challenges, and even before I could say, Jack, there's the Russian, Ukrainian issue. I'll be coming more to that one. How are you managing the situation now with respect to still having challenges with supplies for production as well?
So I recall in the COVID era, a number of the flour mill companies had to ration their imports because they were not getting allocation from their major suppliers from Ukraine and other related, Canada and France, thereabout, because there was this challenge with availability of vessel, availability of raw materials. It cut across most factories. So factories that had a bit of buffer stock of their raw materials had to find a way to ration. And about then, demand also to some extent dropped in the COVID era. And therefore, some took advantage of it to ration their production and then reduce their output so as to keep the machines running. Others who could not had to lay off staff, and everybody one way or the other develop a strategy to keep its machines running and the systems going, whilst they diversified into other forms of other lines of business. Trading, it became another option, and that's why we kept saying to government, when you drop in a policy like benchmark values, discount values, when the policy incoherent with production, most factories with big budget and turnovers will only just go out there and also import. So I believe in the era, a number of enterprises opted for importation just to keep their factories moving. And as much as that's not good for the country, when the policy inconsistency plays in, most manufacturers will not get to the streets and protest.
Do I get from you that because of the benchmark value, majority of your members have now opted to importing and just packaging?
Because it makes economic sense.
But you are still going to pay the tax. That what you are complaining about, you have now joined the gang because that was something.
That is why when we get to government and we advise government on policy, and we say to government, if this policy will help manufacturing and they gloss over it.
Were you able to demonstrate to government enough the impact of this on the sector?
When we engage government, we
do that much engagement.
We go to the table with
all the scenarios and everything.
Scenarios, practitioners, and then you add the aspect of theory so that we could make a sound case. Most of us in industry
today, why didn't government listen to you then?
Well, the option is it's an advice to government, and then they make the last decision. possibly looking at other consideration of social impact of your interventions. You know, sometimes your interventions will have, like the governor said recently, some intervention will have a painful bite now, but you get it, the results in the future, just like taking care of a sore on your arm. You might go through a little pain in the early days, but you benefit. Policy comes in, has its gestation period. And the period must be allowed, the policy must be allowed to go through the stages of growth. If you truncate it, then you better don't do it. Then you lose out on the interventions. So we make our policy interventions and then we go to government and make a strong case. We don't shy away from that. We say it as it is. And we give them all the scenarios. But the decision is theirs because they look into other parameters and impact on the social activities of lives of people and persons, of the citizen, and take into consideration other factors like the political era and other socio-economic issues around the city and then around the world.
But if you are doing this importation, obviously that is going to have an impact on jobs. The level of hands that you need if you are in active manufacturing wouldn't be the same as just importing small
So
pieces.
active manufacturing also desires policy consistency to guarantee what we call the investors' return on investment.
Did you tell government all these things?
Government is aware. And fortunately, our friends in government we've been in private sector before. So when we go to the table, we lay the cards as well.
So has this resulted in some layoffs as well, or restructuring, adding people to stay home?
The weak of them.
The benchmark value because of the...
Oh, of course, the benchmark value.
Has it resulted in some industries laying of workers?
You were here, Walmart had at the stage.
But you have more data than I do.
That is what I'm saying. I'm giving you examples.
Have your members ended up asking people to go home because of this?
They did. Some did, and I'm giving an example like Walmart did, and it was all over here on air when we saw the demonstration way back in Sandama when their factory was laying bare, they couldn't produce, they couldn't process. And I'm
not mention names, but what is the number that we're looking at here?
Oh, I can't give you numbers because I didn't crunch the numbers before coming in. But a number of factories at the stage had to lay off workers just to reshape, restructure the activities because the benchmark value was negative on their books.
What is the state of the discussions right now? I know the door has not been closed yet. Well, are you still pushing, engaging government to ensure that these concerns are addressed now?
I think at the final engagement with government on this matter, government proposed the review as it is now, as a temporary review, with the promise that by close of year, hopefully they will review this to its original status quo. We hope that works according to plan. That was the last communication I had in a particular...
End of year is quite long.
Well, that is
what you're already going through right now.
Well, then the combination of activities and these inflationary related effects on various activities now worsens the plight, and therefore a number of factories will call you. I had a call from the sachet water producers and the bottled water producers, believing that it's time they need to do a price check. And then sometimes you worry. Logistics companies will give a cry, look at the cost of fuel, doubled a few months back, 54,000 liter, diesel will cost you close to 300,000. Today it's about 500,000+. And when it happens that way, they are forced to do a jack in unit price to the consumer.
I know some of your members have held on for a while.
That's correct.
Because of competition.
Competition and the market share.
Going forward, I mean, how long can your members hold on, i.e. passing on the cost to consumers? You've spoken about bottled and pure water. I know this concern was boiling over the past 2 or 3 months.
That's correct.
Now, finally, they are passing on that cost. How long can your members hold on to this cost input challenges, supply challenges, taxes at the port? So I've been complaining about double taxation as well. It appears that we've gotten to the end of the road, right?
No, you can't say that.
And this because from what your members are saying.
Well,
have we gotten to the end of the road?
It comes from sector to sector. You need to see whether your sector and your market share, how do you manage your market share? Don't you forget that we're also now in AFTA, and therefore the doors are now widened. And if you cede off your market share without taking a bit of the bite, others will feel it, and it becomes difficult to get it back. So every sector has to think through the elasticity of its product and determine whether they should pass on the total cost or otherwise. Secondly, now the international arena in terms of the events of the world playing in gives it a global picture, and the impact is massive, but you find some solace in engaging your customers who are also aware of what is happening in the world, and then figure out how to share your extra cost that is coming in, and some are reasonable to it.
Because I ask this because you've gone for credit from banks.
That's correct.
You have shareholders that have invested in your business.
That's correct.
That's how I was asking how long, because I remember recently the cement producers also hinted that we are going up. And I know you have more data than I do from your end as president. And that's why I'm just trying to find out that, I mean, I know competition, there's the moral argument and all the rest, but it appears that the way things are going, and it's a global challenge as well.
It's a global challenge,
we should be expecting more hike in prices.
Oh yeah, there are some adjustments in prices. Every now and then you walk to the market, ask your wife when she gets to the shops, she comes back to tell you, hey, honey, and I had one complaint recently. They said, I walked into a particular shop, I buy this for 7 cedis, the next time it's 14 cedis. So, woo, as I'm not surprised. So, we
should be expecting more hikes in goods.
As to more, with the current intervention from the BOG, one of the triggers that was worsening the plight was the exchange rate related effect. And that with this recent intervention from the BOG, you realize that there's some calmness on the business front. And we also pray the media also manages their drive of speculation, and you chase every change in fuel price on the market. And
no, but that's just market update.
And it's market update, but
that is happening on the market. When I drive by the service station, I see the billboard.
I don't disagree with you.
I don't need.
But when it becomes
Joy FM
and
tell people out there
speculative,
where speculative
I
is.
can tell you.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, sometimes like what happened in the case of the exchange rate. At a stage, we believe there was the theory of speculative
feeding into
it. In a day, I could see the dollar jumping from 8.1 to 8.4, and it was alarming. Whilst we are aware that some of the gentlemen that deal with the exchange rate on the street, they call them the katakata boys, and then they're all over the guru boys. Some heard it, and at a stage we have been calling on the BOG governor to engage the commercial banks, because some commercial banks also trade. We hold and trade with these allergies.
Betting on the city.
That's correct. And therefore, we felt that the governor should have found a way to crack down a bit of it. Sometimes you got to deploy such activities, and it was very speculative. They drive it, and they get a few of the media personnel, and then they are on it.
I don't think that they're trying to speak for my colleagues that anybody is getting out there to bet
so that is
on
why
the city.
That is why we suggest to you, mind how you handle speaking down or talking down the city.
I bet today on that one. But I get from you that some of these price hikes was largely influenced by the volatility of the city.
That's correct.
And you're hopeful that if the city firmly stabilizes, we will see some improvement.
We'll see some reasonability in pricing. And then that's why some factories and some producers are not in a hurry to push up the price. They will want to see what happens in the first 2-3 weeks, and once there's that reasonable stability, you cushion it a little with some reasonable price adjustment, because you need to be careful about your market. And I've said, after it's just on your door and the others are seeking to come in with that.
What about the fuel pricing? Because that is also impacting on your cost of production.
That is significant.
Because I say this because I engage some business, and like, George, we've gotten to the end of the road because, listen, we've been able to absorb for a long while because of competition and all the rest. But at a point in time, George, somebody has to take care of the cost.
I run one of them.
I know you are a heavy businessman.
And the impact of fuel on the fleet, I know it's very significant. When you lock yourself into a year's contract to haul a particular product for a particular client, and then seeing the figures in between the period, you need to go negotiate for price adjustment. The pricing window for the diesel petroleum has just changed a couple of times. You might need about a month to close or renegotiate your contracts that are already running. So yes, to say it bluntly, the impact has been severe on a number of enterprises, and some have tried to absorb it to keep their market share. But it gets to a stage, you need to assess it as an individual business or as a sector or a cluster. and figure out how much you can absorb and how much you could jump, taking cognizance of your market and to keep your share of the market.
There are predictions and even engaging the Chamber of Bulk Distributors that based on some BOG actions that they've done a separate market in terms of sale of dollars,
intervention.
We should be expecting some reduction in the next pricing window.
That's correct.
Good news for industry because of the consumption level.
It is. I mean, once you bring that reasonability into that sector of fuel and controlling that pricing window, of course, it will translate into two things: your pricing on your product, even on the speculative nature of the dollar, because these OMCs also pick up what they call currencies from the market. So once these two get direct intervention, we pray the speculative nature of the gentleman on the street will also drop, and somehow we expect this dollar to
and that would impact on your cost.
Definitely, it will. I mean, it will, because hey, apart from your import that you are paying in dollars, and then you are selling in cedis, you have other inputs that you need to take care of. And then if the cost of operations are going up and they are curtailed, one with the drop in price of fuel and that of the exchange rate, of course it should have an impact on your final price.
In terms of the supply challenges that you're experiencing and all those challenges that you're experiencing, taxes, levies and all the rest, I mean, what should government be doing right now? I know that maybe some will say that, George, let's forget about stimulus because of the current fiscal challenges that government is facing. But what do industries want now from government to try and stabilize things a little bit for you?
One of the interventions over the period we engage government is at a port of entry, where we have also a window of price review, I think every other week, on the import.
In terms of charges?
No, important, because they are all computed, because most of your charges from your shipping line and the other related port charges, some are computed in dollars. And therefore, once the exchange rate is hitting, of course, you need to jack up and get more cities to pay up your duty.
And so granted, again, BOG's directive of quoting in dollars.
Well, that's something I pray you put your comments on that. And
because it came up and BOG said they would deal with it because they are not allowed
to quote. But the window gives opportunity to just adjust the exchange rate every 2 weeks.
Wow.
So, check it. I mean, that's...
No, I'm not doubting you. I'm just surprised. I'm not doubting you.
So that alone, granted that the exchange rate keeps misbehaving, the dynamics of the exchange rate will also translate into cost. So if we could get a 6 month window that for the year 2022, 2023, for every 6 months, let me peg the dollar at say amount, hedge the dollar for importers at the port. However, but to government, that is a revenue, because that's one of its major revenue sources to balance its books. But if we could do that, we could bring some reasonable stability in our price and windows for various production and import. That is one issue I would want to engage the minister seriously on and see how best we could restructure the activities of the port that has a 2 week window of exchange rate factor and its cascading effect on production.
When the president came to announce the review in COVID-19 restrictions and even reopening the borders, we were all excited. But I know a lot of businesses or manufacturing firms that invested heavily in PPEs and even the face masks. The fact that now it is not compulsory. How are these members of you dealing with the situation right now? Because now, obviously, that is going to hit demand. And I know there are a lot of firms that were heavy in this. How are you going to manage?
Well, that is where when you walk in to do every business, you scan the environment. That duty will not fall on the president to do that for you. So the action of the president, to him, he has a bigger agenda that he's managing. You take advantage of opportunities. Some will take advantage of circumstances or phenomena to create wealth. So if you do not calculate your activities well, and then the circumstances expires, there'll be some casualties, and that you cannot run away from it. So we only pray that those who have invested heavily into some PPEs, who hopefully by now would have thought through how to dispose some, sell it out, donate them, and such products you do not overstock it, such that you manage your stock reasonably. I don't believe I'm saying it wrongly, but I believe there'll be a few casualties.
Yeah.
But I pray that some of the gains they made over the period, exponential gains, can be good reserves for them to look into other space of engagement. Because we did say in the early days of COVID that PPEs will be a short-term intervention or operations, unless otherwise a number of them may need to retool and reshape the operations.
I mean, let's look at also the opening of the land borders.
That's correct.
Here as well. That has an impact in terms of the cost of transporting some of these raw materials. I don't know about how you were also excited when these land borders, how you were worried when these land borders were closed. And now that the opening of that could also help as well when it comes to cutting of certain raw materials from neighboring countries to the manufacturing countries, and how is that going to impact on your fortunes going forward as well?
No, I think it's a positive one. I mean, the opening of the borders now gives you a guaranteed easy flow of goods, both import and export, in terms of sales, in terms of bringing raw materials. Even the perception that the borders are open even will boost tourism and bring in influx of what you call all shape and forms of persons. Well. So yes, it's a good decision that the president took. And bear in mind, taking this decision just about a time when the inflationary rates are jumping, the exchange rate were misbehaving, and there's a bit of contraction in production as a result of the policy rate and the cost of borrowing. Of course, it brings some contraction in the system. So if the borders are open and you can increase your output in one form of shape from the transitional period of COVID and scale up your capacity of production, and if you have markets across the borders, it's good for you. In the era when it was shut, a number of factories could not really export their product. Some had to figure out how to survive on that space. So I think it's a good thing to hear that the borders are open, and I believe it will stir up activities and production and sales.
Until I heard the governor of the Bank of Ghana speak recently at the MPC, I underestimated the magnitude of the Russian-Ukraine issue, not just about the global supplies, but the direct impact on Ghana in terms of our exports and imports as well of raw materials. What is the situation for industry in terms of raw materials? Just help me out. How bad is the situation? Help me out here.
I deal with a few of the flour companies, and look, their import bill is jumped up over 40%. Because of between Russia and Ukraine, they supply about 30 to 40% of the world's commodity prices, especially for wheat, corn, and fertilizer into the entire global market. And it's pretty significant. And a number of the firms had to ration their stock. And I have a line that does a bit of business with them, and therefore I could appreciate it. And I see exchanges and figures being sent to me. And it got worse when the depreciation also just hit in. So whilst the supply chain, you were struggling to keep your market, and I keep telling you, it's also creating a form of threat. When you are going down, others are really happy about it. So the supply chain was disrupted in a number of factories. And when we talk about what you call wheat that leads to bread, it's a staple that most houses are into. And if you look at the dynamics in what you call agri season, when there's a bumper harvest of the cereals like the corn and the wheat, there's an interplay between that and the wheat market. So what is happening, don't be surprised to see the food basket driving the inflationary rate as stated by the governor in the MPC report.
And even the UN is saying that we may hit food crisis compared to what we hit in the Second World War. That's a UN body as well. There'll be food FAO.
It depends on how long the war lasts, and then that can be a threat in terms of inflationary and food shortages. And therefore, government should be very much aware about such information, controlling, having some real talk with factories that are into such products, and then helping them stock more and helping them how they manage their stocks. Because I know other jurisdictions are finding ways to stock and they are not exporting. And therefore, if you don't find a way to have a strategic interventions with these factories producing flour, corn, and related everyday food related issues, if the war persists for another 6 months, there could be a real concern.
But that's why I'm asking that. How are you guys managing? Because the cost has hit the roof.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not even, one of my friends was saying that, George, it's not even about the money again, but even getting the supply lines to get the raw material for is another big challenge.
That is why I say they are rationing.
How are you managing now?
So you realize that the price transfer to the final consumer is being stagnated. You cannot slap, some product cannot just slap their final cost transferred straight to the customer. You do that, you lose your market. And therefore you stagnate it. You find other innovative ways in your production line to cut cost and renegotiate a bit of your contract pricing. And I pray now that the borders are all open. Export will also do some of our colleagues well by exporting their products, the hard currency.
So I mean, what should government be doing for you? What do you think the government should be doing?
For the food industry per se, I would say that government should, beyond doing all the planting for food and jobs, monitoring and then evaluation to make sure the value chain is okay. For companies like ones into direct products like the flour mills and the other feed mills for chicken and related, the government to really look at the system and get a package that could support them in terms of stocking and then helping them in controlling their stocks so that we don't run into any someone shortage.
I mean, during COVID, when every supplies from outside were cut, we depended heavily on local industries to save us.
That's correct.
Now that things are being eased and all the challenge, people are saying that, listen, or some industries are saying that, listen, government, don't leave us in the rain because we saved the economy when COVID was so bad. What is industry doing about this to ensure that still that special preference is given to local industries?
That's one. One is engaging government that makes sure the benchmark related policies are reviewed so that we get a right cost. We don't transfer the final price. We don't get excessive levies and taxes on operations. To them that are in real difficult position, we are engaging the Ministry of Finance and the Minister of Agriculture and Trade, not agriculture, to see how we can package a number of our enterprises for some special interventions and depending on their state, what can be ring-fenced, what sort of intervention. So it's a case-on-case basis. And that's one of the tasks I seek to do in my presidency, targeting about 20 companies, just reasonable to start with, and over the period, see how we can help them resuscitate and get their system repackaged for special interventions and growth.
Some will say that stimulus, maybe forget it.
Even in this particular case, we're not targeting stimulus. We believe we could engage the stock exchange, we could engage the DBG, that is the Development Bank of Ghana, the GESEL project that is run under one of the government interventions that they could underwrite your facility for you with your banks and give you some form of long-term funding. We want to go that way and see how we can support a number of our enterprises to get back to their feet.
I know your business barometer, you always had cost of credit as one of your major challenge. I know it has not improved unless things have changed. Now you've had the policy rate hike. It has been a double-edged sword in trying to correct a liquidity challenge as well.
That's right.
How are industries managing with this challenge or with this policy intervention? Because you're already struggling with access and cost, and now there's a policy rate hike that is trying to check liquidity as well.
Well, with the position of the governor's instruction on the policy rate, of course, it brings about contraction in the system. Cost of funding is gone through the roof. But one who asks, the situation is a chicken and egg situation between a hard rock and a deep blue sea. Would you survive now and recover some other day? It's not a pleasant of decisions for businesses at this stage with a policy rate hike. Because now with this position and some other interventions, you realize the Bank of Ghana also brought about reverse a number of intervention, pre-COVID intervention to the banks.
That is taking effect tomorrow.
So therefore it takes contraction. So there's not much money for the banks to lend easily. And therefore even the access to funding will be one major issue. And then the second one is the cost of funding. Access of funding, because now with that contraction and the policy rate, the intention of governor is not to get money in excess circulation, and therefore they'll control that. And so that will trigger the banks will really be careful to lend these days. So in good times for business with the policy rate. But I believe the intent of the governor and the managers of the economy is to bring stability and some predictability in the pricing of our products. So that is it. So we're losing one and trying to figure it out that way. It's a hard time for business.
One of the things the banks have complained about is high non-performing loans. And there were some firms, manufacturing firms and industries that they lent to, and they had not been able to service these loans on time. What has been the challenge for some of industries?
But historically, we all know until the banking cleanup exercise, and then the books indicated when some banks themselves were doing third-party lending to them firms, and they refused to even report to the credit bureau. They form a section of it, so they are part of the activities themselves. Some of their own friends were part of it, and they'll come back and be screaming the SMEs are not doing what is needful. Beyond that, circumstances and situations like the COVID era, I mean, those are force majeure related issues, crippled a number of enterprises. And there are other related ones, which is the structure of the economy, whereby we keep saying that a local content law should be passed across a number of sectors to guarantee predictability of business. Some businesses are flash in the pan, they come in and they go out. So if you lend into a kind of flash in the business, whereby you cannot guarantee sustainability, there are concerns. Another aspect is the risk managers and the appraisal personnel of the banks. We pray they do top-notch appraisal and reporting system to know their businesses, what we call it KYC, or know your customer.
I think it will help a lot in reducing the high loan default.
Because once you are able to profile your clients very well, and over the years, that's what the credit bureau was intending to do, so that you could easily sensitize and know which clients are falling short, they are doing well, and then you segment. And then the next one is then you proceed to do your risk analysis. So those are part of the issues. And the general structure of the economy also has its own effect, where exchange rates are getting offhand, and if the exchange rates are falling and somebody takes some credit in and trading in cities or imports, and it comes in and it cannot easily transfer the final price to the consumer, that also will have an impact on the non-performing loans. So there are a myriad of issues that come into the basket, and also government's inability to sometimes pay contractors. So government himself is also a part of the game. So you see, there are a myriad of activities that comes to the basket that we need to pick one after the other and then figure out how to solve it.
I know that there's a drive to go cashless as an economy and all the rest, and there are some who've raised concerns about it. There are some who are saying that it has to do with the rate and all the rest. I mean, industries, I know that could have an impact on demand for your goods and all the rest. E-levy, it has taken off. I mean, industries, I mean, what are your thoughts about this?
Oh, this, you know. But to me, I always look at it from this angle. One, the ability of government to expand the tax net.
Yeah.
I hear people say, why are you taxing the poor? Hey, but why everybody got to pay tax, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Jesus paid tax, so everybody got to pay tax.
But the tax is more on those who earn more and those who...
So you segment it, and then you figure it out that way. And bear in mind, e-levy, e-tax, there are options. If you believe you could do without it, you can do without it. Because
don't use the mobile
platform. I mean, there are options. I mean, I'm not suggesting don't use it. Okay. I'm saying there are options. Is that the decision is for the man in the street to make as we drive the cashless system. If you believe there is value for it, and you believe you do not earn enough, and you don't want to use e-levy, nobody bans you to use e-levy. So when you want to use it, there's convenience in that e-levy. Because if I need to send 200 Ghana cedis to an auntie somewhere in the village, presumably, I may need to get somebody that I need to trust, take all the risk element into consideration, or board a car and go give him the 200 Ghana cedis. Then you put into reason, do I use e-levy and pay a 1.5 and then save all the convenience? So each and every individual should look at it. But I look at it from the ability of government to generate revenue from other sources, and each person should pay a bit of a tax into the coffers with the presumption that government someday will raise enough revenue and lower the taxes and lower the internal borrowing. That is also triggering the TB rates and also cascading effect onto policy and all that.
There are fears that it's going to impact on the cost of operations for businesses as well. And that is where they...
Oh, yeah, it will. Granted that if I have a fleet and then I make sure that all my drivers that are driving and somebody's in Tamale and I want to make life easier, I need to send it to him by, what do you call, e-levy. And I got to integrate that cost into my operations and make the customer pay for it. That's the way it goes.
So you think that the bitter pill should be taken now?
It should be taken. And
on the presumption that it's going to be used for the right things.
So that becomes the next phase. Accountability and what it is used for. That is the next phase that we need to focus our attention on and hold the feet of government to the fire and make sure the right thing is done with the money.
It'll be a good time to take a break as we talk about industries, economic recovery, and we're engaging the president of the Ghana Association of Industries, Dr. Humphrey Yimdak. I'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the state of Ghanaian industries and the economic recovery as I engage the president of the Ghana Association of Industries, Dr. Humphrey Yimdak. And as we wrap up, Doc, I just wanted to find out from you, going forward for you, what are the threats out there to industry as the year rolls on?
Well, a few of the threats that I recall is the conduct of the Federal Reserve of the U.S., the chair, Jeremy Powell's conduct with the intent of increasing the pricing of could drive a lot of foreign investors and portfolio investors, and a lot of money will move out of the emerging markets back into that place. That can bring a lot of distortion. The next one has to do with our food basket and the planting and the season coming up because of the concerns of Ukraine and the fertilizer related ones. And finally will be the exchange rate related ones and inflationary ones.
Dr. Yimdak, I appreciate your time so much, and I know that we will have to continue this conversation.
Anytime.
This is PM Express Business Edition as we draw the curtain down as we engage the president of the Association of Ghana Industries on the state of industries and the economic recovery. Well, the debate will go on in your homes and offices, but have a great day.